Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to our webinar at the African Governance Institute for Development. Welcome, Galwa Adamu. Thank you for joining us. Wherever you're joining from, please put in the comment section. We would love to know where you're joining us from this evening. Tonight, we're going to be talking about breaking barriers, the power of youth and women involvement in nation building. And I am really excited, really excited because I have my sister from across the continent, from Kenya, Caren Wakoli. And it is such a joy, such a pleasure to really have her come online. And so very quickly, I will read just a little part of our profile, just so that you know who we're talking to this evening. Caren Wakoli is a certified leadership coach, transformational leadership trainer, democracy and good governance champion, certified 7 habits of highly effective people trainer. She's a writer, a social entrepreneur, and her mission is to equip the next generation of Kenyan and African leaders with the skills necessary to achieve their highest potential and lead change in their communities. And Caren obviously has been involved in so many things, part of which I will just very quickly rush through. She's chaired Nairobi City County Interim Youth Advisory and Resource Mobilization Board. Wow, that's a mouthful. National Council member, African Peer Review Mechanism. She is the founder, and this is probably the big one for me, and executive director of Emerging Leaders Foundation. This is what I know Caren for. This is what I see her do, and I'm just really so impressed. She's worked over 15 years in the youth empowerment space in Kenya and Africa. She's an accredited external trainer to the Kenya School of Government, training on transformative leadership and ethics and integrity for public servants. She was the first female elected vice chairperson, student organization of Nairobi University, and she was elected Congress Lady, Gender Affairs Secretary, and vice chair of the union for 3 consecutive years. And as you can imagine, it goes on and on and on. But I know that she has trained over 3,000 people. She's impacted over 200,000 Africans in the process, and her people that she's trained, they're making impact, they're leading change in their communities, registering over 100 community projects, which embodies the organization's vision of young Africans driving positive change and empowering their communities. Wow, Caren, thank you so much for being here. And I mean, I'm excited to have you. We've been trying to plan this for some time. It just so happens that when Kenya gets into the spotlight, we have our conversation. So it's so good to have you. Welcome, Caren.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. So happy to join you and your team.
Fantastic. So very quickly, for our guests, I would like you to just start by summarizing the work you do now. You've done so many things and you've been recognized for so many things. So where's Caren now? What is the work she's doing, and what is the impact you're making currently in Kenya and across Africa?
Wow. So yeah, like you say, I have done many things, but all those things can actually be summed up into one, which is nurturing ethical and values-based leaders among young people, older people, young women, young men, in Kenya and across the continent. I really love the work I do. I feel like I'm in my life's purpose, just nurturing and developing leaders. And I'll be honest with you. I do this work because I see a clear connection between the quality of life that we live and the quality of leaders that we have. Having grown up in really difficult circumstances, economically speaking, and coming to realize that really poverty is not the natural design of things. People are supposed to live in dignity. And in Africa, we have more than enough for everybody, but very little for the greed of a few people, in certain spaces. And I realized that leadership really is the cornerstone of all human development, all sustainable development. It's a question of good leadership. And I decided to then start developing myself and learning how to become a better leader, speaking to people, reading books, watching films, and all that. And then time came when I started participating in national and continental building processes like the African peer review mechanism process at the continental level through the African Union. And then realizing that, oh man, as I'm exiting the youth bracket, I need younger people to take after me. I need to pass on the baton. And I know this is something we rarely do, but it's really important to do succession planning, pass on the leadership baton, because it's really important. So that's what I do through Emerging Leaders Foundation Africa, based here in Kenya. And we nurture values-based leaders to go lead right where they are. We believe that each and every person is a leader, but sometimes it takes one leader to call out the leader in somebody else through the coaching, mentorship, and just supporting individuals to see the beauty and the power in themselves. And most importantly, we support leaders to discover and to know that they have a voice and that they need to speak up. A lot of times we give other people power to speak for us and to say things for us. No. At Emerging Leaders Foundation, we say, you have your voice matters. Even when you're afraid, when your voice shakes, no, just try and speak up, because it's really important. So in a nutshell, that's what we do at Emerging Leaders Foundation Africa.
Fantastic. Just your last point about having a voice, that already speaks to part of what we'll be discussing at our webinar actually in 2 weeks. So thank you for touching on that. And two things you said that really struck me. The first is a statement John Maxwell makes. He says everything rises and falls on leadership. And it's as simple as that. You get into some places and you try and find out why is it working here, and the simple answer is the leadership. And then you look elsewhere and it's just the same thing. And I also love the fact you talked about mentoring, being intentional about mentoring the next generation. I jokingly tell people it's like the football players that become coaches. They last longer, don't they? Keep talking about people that are still, helping others. Those that stopped their careers after football, you never see them again, so to say. So it's so important to keep looking after the next generation. And I think that's a responsibility that is placed on us. All right. So Caren, we're talking about, breaking barriers, the power of youth and women in nation building. So let's start with, what is nation building to you? How are we going to achieve it? And maybe even if you have examples of anyone that has that represents, a true nation builder, that exemplifies what it means to be a nation builder.
Let me start with the last part of your question, which is who exemplifies a great nation builder. Yeah. Externally, I look at somebody like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., looking at his society, his community, and realizing there was racial discrimination. There was this gap that is just not right. And he started working towards eliminating that. It was difficult. It was crazy. He even lost his life because of this, something that he was so convicted about. So I look at that as somebody who really identified what nation building was all about and paid the price, for it. I look at what you are doing right now and what you've been doing for all this while as nation building, because you are creating awareness. You're helping create awareness about why we need to be active citizens, active Africans, to be involved in policy-making processes, decision-making processes, electoral processes, nation-building processes, because that is really important. How do we make our world and our society better than we found it? And I keep saying that the answer to Africa's challenges is actually not these institutions out here or some other person from outside of Africa who will come with the savior mentality to say, oh, guys, I have come with a solution to all of Africa's problems. No.
No way.
The solution and the person to create the solution for Africa's challenges is us Africans.
Absolutely.
And that is actually nation building. Nation
Mm.
building is really a big term to just sort of represent the small building blocks that we get to engage in. For instance, a parent, what kind of children are we raising? Are we raising young boys and girls to be individuals who are curious, they're critical thinkers, they ask questions, they don't just do what they're told to do. No, they say, why this way, why not this way? I think having such citizens is a really, really big thing, but it doesn't begin even in the schools and universities and political parties and all those places. No, begins at home. So nation building, really, essentially speaking, begins right at home. Like what they say, charity begins at home. And I look at nation building as the activities that people engage in consciously to create a safer, more robust environment for themselves and the people who live in that country. So, for instance, things to do with strengthening institutions or building strong institutions, ensuring there's accessible, good quality healthcare for every citizen, ensuring that there's good, accessible, quality education for every child and every young person, let's say, when it comes to universities. That is part of nation building. Creating a safe space and a safe environment where young people, women, persons with disabilities can make their voices heard and make their contribution to national development through different processes. That is actually part of strengthening the nation building system. And the nation is really, really critical. There's a question about identity. Who are we as Africans, as Nigerians, as Kenyans, as South Africans, as whoever African nationality you are? Are you proud to be your nationality? And if not, what can we do as leaders and people in positions of authority to then make sure that every citizen feels seen, they feel honored, they feel appreciated, they feel that their skill set actually matters, their voices matter. Oh my goodness. If you have such a people, that nation will thrive big time. My goodness, that nation will thrive big time. And I love what we are doing in our small way to actually contribute to Africa's development and nation building.
Wow, fantastic. Fantastic. You touched on so many things, and part of which I don't know if I should start with that one, but people being proud, being patriotic, being proud of their countries. I know people that walk around the airports and hide their passports, almost not wanting to identify, and that speaks to the identity of how we currently see our nations in many parts, and definitely that is something that has to be changed. But I also love the fact you talked about nation building, not from the political point of view, because I'm sure people have seen, put nation building and politics and government in the same pot. And it feels like when you talk about it, it's those guys, it's those people in parliament and all of that. I love the way you broke it down, that look, even in the home, just raising a curious child that can ask questions, that can understand that I'm part of something bigger than me, and it's my responsibility to add something to the bigger space. I think is so important and such a critical point of view to have. Just and like you said, everybody else has an agenda. Every time people come and say we want to help you, as a politician myself, one of the first questions is what is in it for you? Because nobody comes to help you just for the sake of helping you. You want to give me a loan in return for what? Because that's always the question. And I think we'll do well to raise the younger generation at least to at least ask those questions. And I think the quality of questions will definitely determine the quality of answers we get. So Caren, I think everybody on this call is probably waiting for me to ask the question on the protest, what has been going on in Kenya. And it's really brought up, conversations across the continent. I know in Kenya, it's been much more than just talking. A lot of people have been involved and may have had loved ones, maybe even injured or hurt, and hopefully not passed on. But the question then is, with the recent events happening in Kenya, do you want to talk to us about the power we then have as young people, as women, to get involved? Because this is, for me, a clear demonstration of people speaking up, and not just speaking up, really wanting to say, we're going to make our voices heard. So do you just want to talk to us generally, obviously being, from Kenya and being on ground in Nairobi and all of that?
Thank you for that question. Wow. I look at what's happening in Kenya on a number of different fronts, in different perspectives. So there's the positive, exciting, visionary, hopeful perspective and side to things, and there's a sad, heartbreaking, what other term can I use? Yeah, side to things. So let me start with that side. My father brought me up to myself and my siblings to know that it's important to speak up, to share your opinion. And my father really believes in democracy. And there are times when that hasn't worked for him, where he sits down and, as his children, we question him, we question my mother and say, why this? And, all that. And he has to respond to the questions. But then even when he does not agree, he actually listens. So when my mother does not agree, she still will listen. That we have now embraced that, as a way of life, that it's really important to listen. And that is a value that is really critical in leadership, because I posted something on social media the other day and said that, leadership, I've discovered that leadership is one of the most daunting tasks in life. And leaders are human. And as humans, we're limited. We do not know everything. We do not have all the answers to all the questions and all the challenges. And so that's why it's really then important for leaders to make time and create safe spaces to listen to the public, listen to the citizens. What are they saying? What do they know that I do not know? Where is the shoe pinching? So that then the policies we formulate are actually citizen-centric. They are informed by the citizens and the needs and aspirations of citizens. That is so critical. And so right now we find ourselves as a country in this season, this very, I would call, transformative moment in the history of our nation, where many citizens, especially Gen Zs, the young people, are asking difficult questions. They are saying, we do not have jobs, but we're going to be taxed. They're asking many different questions about different pointers here and there. And unfortunately, some of our politicians were actually just dismissing young people, saying, "Oh, these young people, surely, how can you go for a demonstration in an Uber, and then with an iPhone, and then you get there, and then at some point you're taking a break to go grab a sandwich and then go back to to the protest? Like that is not protest." And that these young people are confused. They need to go and whatever. But then young people are like, you know what? This is still my right. If I want to take a glass of water or have a sandwich as I go to protest, that is my right. But the main thing is that these are my issues, and I want my member of parliament or my president or my elected leaders, the parliament, to actually listen to me. But unfortunately, some of them have lost their lives.
Wow.
That is the saddest part, that you go to make your voice heard, to try and make your country better, to make your life better, to make your destiny better, and to contribute to the positive nation building, and then you go. So that's sad, and I'm hoping, with your permission, can we just take a minute of silence to just honor the lives of young people that have been lost? Just 1 minute, if you allow.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you. It's not 1 minute, but thank you for the moment of silence to honor those lives, the heroes, the hope, the representation of hope. And so on the flip side, I see young women, young men, and citizens in general coming out to say, listen to us. Yesterday, I would say, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday was a big win where the president addressed the nation and said, Kenyans, young people, I have listened to your voice. You do not want the proposed finance bill 2024 to pass because of this, and that. And I will not assent to it. I'm sending it back to Parliament for the members of Parliament to work on it and make sure they incorporate the voices of the people. Oh, that's really a powerful win, that one voice, two voices, three voices, 4, 10, 100, 1,000 can actually make a difference. Like random citizens just coming together to say, we want to be listened to. This is not working for us. Let's explore this and that, and that can actually make a difference. And so I look at that as a win. On the flip side, though, it's interesting that across the continent, we've always been complaining that the younger generation is not interested in politics and governance. All they want to think about is go watch Netflix and chill and all that. But this is telling us a different story.
That's right.
This is the first time I'm actually seeing young people going on TikTok, producing videos explaining the finance bill in Kenya in different local dialects. People to understand.
Absolutely.
That is so innovative. So I feel like we need to mentor many more young people, mentor many more women, especially women and young people, to then realize that their contribution actually makes a difference. It counts. And so please come out, be heard. Come out, either run for office. If you want to run for office, support somebody who is ethical and values driven that is running for office, or raise credible children. Whatever you do, get to do it so well that you get to make a difference in somebody's life. That is part of nation building.
Oh, fantastic, Caren. I love the fact you've been able to show two different sides to the equation. And I mean, it goes without saying that what has happened in Kenya over the last few days, we had similar situation during the End SARS movement, which I'm sure you heard about, and people died as well. And I want to talk about two key points, both from the side of the people and from the side of the government, so to say. And from the side of people, absolutely, it's that awakening that has happened, and young people saying enough, where no more you are the leaders of tomorrow. We are the leaders of today. We want to participate now, and we need to participate now. And the zeal, the creativity, the innovation, using social media, using technology, using crypto and all of these things to fund and raise things. And it's almost like a David and Goliath thing, isn't it? The Goliaths don't understand these stones you guys are bringing. Like, what's all this? And like you said, how can you go and take a drink in the middle of a protest? It's not how we know protest to be. And so I think that is really inspiring. And to your point, and that's why they need to be educated. Still without knowledge is not good. And for example, if they were more educated, perhaps their MPs that voted, when the next election comes, they will let them know that, hey, we know our rights. And if you are not speaking on our behalf, when we want you to speak in this manner,
Yeah.
then maybe we should give the votes to someone else. So that is the type of knowledge that young people now need to have, rather than being deflated from, because it's kind of what happened in NSAS is a lot of young people had a lot of hope and then got deflated and weren't able to start again. But the point is that they must understand that yes, this has happened, but we still have a voice and we will make it heard as often as we can. But to the second point which you raised, and which again, absolutely brilliant point, is this listening from government. Why did it take so long to listen? Why did it take so long? Because, hey, if what you're saying is the status quo now, the president has listened, but he could have listened before the Tuesday vote. He could have, the listening could have happened much earlier. The listening could have been a little bit, before a lot of the issues that have now happened. And that speaks to the point of African, and not just African, because I remember the Hong Kong one went on for many months, the protest there, and Black Lives Matter and all of these things, the protests went on. So it speaks to the fact that how long does it take for governments to listen and really understand that yes, there are competing priorities, but if this is such a strong point for the people and we are playing representative, or we are not just representatives, but these people have participated, then we should listen to them. So I want to ask you, Caren, because I bet this is the question in some people's minds. Do we have to wait for protests to get involved? Because it seems it's only at protests we seem to get any sort of, must we wait till we protest? Is that the only way we will really get involved in nation building? Is it just at protest level?
In fact, protests are more symptomatic. So surely we do not want to engage at the symptoms level. We want to go to the roots where it really matters. And there are so many ways of engaging. And we need to normalize speaking to each other and listening, and not just when there's a problem. Let me give you a personal example. I serve at Emerging Leaders Foundation. I have a team of colleagues that I get to work with. At the height of COVID, we were wondering how do we navigate this? Suddenly, we need to go start working from home. That wasn't a routine or a habit we were in, but suddenly we needed to adapt to that. But then this was just a different scenario. People going through certain challenges, personality challenges, family challenges, economic, whatever. So many things shifted. I remember one of my colleagues coming to me and asking me, Caren, have you had a meeting with any of the team members to know how they're doing? I said, no. Then I asked him, should I do that? He said, yes. I said, why? He said, it's just important. People are going through stuff. And I said, let me start with you. He told me what was happening in his life. Oh my goodness, I was in shock. I decided to meet each and every team member informally outside the office to just get to know what was happening. The meetings actually led us to making decisions that we were going to work from home. We're going to provide internet for everybody. We're going to have check-in times in the morning for like 30 minutes to just get to know, how are you doing? How is your family? How is your partner? How are your children? How are you coping? How can we come in to support? We made changes around our medical cover policy, introduced therapy, access to therapy for all team members. And we also introduced something what we call the shadow ED, where each and every staff member gets 1 week to act as the executive directors of the organization. They get to make decisions, and I go with them to different meetings where sometimes they need to negotiate. And I throw them to the deep end to also then just realize, oh my goodness, so this is what it means to lead an institution. And yes, I can lead, an organization. And then at the end of the week, we get to pick lessons. I learn from them. I share feedback. We share feedback and we get to learn. I was only able to sort of serve the organization or make a difference out of listening.
Absolutely.
And I have since discovered that, oh my goodness, if we can just learn to sit back and say, I am all ears. Tell me what's happening. How are you? How are you really? This is more of like leading from a place of empathy, compassion, and love. It's really important. And part of
Absolutely.
what we do that as we train our leaders to go out there, maybe in the political space, in government, in civil society, in schools, we
Mm,
say, please listen. And we even practically go through processes of how do you genuinely listen and then get to do something, because listening is really important. And so
yeah.
if the political class or any other leader in any space can make it a habit to listen, not only when there are challenges, oh my goodness, I think we would really grow as individuals, as human beings, as leaders. That
Mm,
would make a whole lot of a difference. And I think it's also really, really important for citizens and people in general to learn that it's important to give feedback.
mm,
When you have members of parliament or political leaders or even leaders of institutions and families
mm,
plundering resources,
mm,
making mistakes, being corrupt and having impunity, that
mm,
it's important to give them feedback and hold them to account.
mm,
And only do that when there's a crisis, when there are protests and all that. That's when we show up and say, oh, we're here, we're carrying placards. No, 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 no. Proper nation building, proper effective participation as
mm.
citizens of a country, as Africans, surely begins right in our own homes, in the cafeterias, in the hotels, in the sporting grounds, in every space, online, doing
Yeah.
so with respect, with honor, but holding each other to account.
Mm,
And one thing that is also really critical, other than just giving feedback and participating in all that, is
mm.
leading by example.
Absolutely.
But sometimes we're busy saying lead with integrity, care about people, be empathetic, be accountable, be transparent, but we
Mm,
are not transparent. We are
mm,
not ethical
mm,
ourselves.
mm,
Then who we are is so loud and screams that people can't hear what we say.
I'm saying.
So
Mm.
the best way to lead change, the best way to lead and participate and build our nation, build our continent is through example. Let people see it in us. Let us live it out, not just talking it out. Let's live it out.
Wow, Karen, absolutely, absolutely fantastic. So, for anyone just joining us, this is the African Governance Institute for Development, AGID, and we have with us Caren Wakoli from Nairobi, Kenya, from the ELF, and we've been talking about breaking barriers, the power of youth and women getting involved in nation building. Karen, as you were talking, you made me remember a story I also faced, and the point of humility and leading by example being such hallmarks of great leadership. And similar story was, it was during COVID, and admittedly nobody had faced COVID. We didn't know what was out there, and I think the natural reaction was to hide like everybody else. Until the day I heard John Maxwell say, "You need leaders the most during crisis. You need leaders the most. Like, yes, you need leaders every time, but during crisis, you need leaders." And that asked the question. Then I had to answer is, if I am the representative of the people, I was in the House of Assembly at the time, what am I supposed to do? There was no playbook. There was no rule book that during COVID, do this, do this. There was nothing. And at that point, we had to lead with our values. If we
Mm,
felt love is one of our values in the organization is care, which care, love, empathy.
yeah.
If we love people, what does that mean in a time like this? What does that mean? And what it means is you go out there and you help people. Because we didn't have a playbook, we didn't have precedent to follow. So we just went there and started, if you like, listening. And then we understood the first problem was people didn't have information, because I represent a semi-urban rural area. They didn't even know what was going on. And so the first thing was information. And then when the more we listened, the more we heard, oh, we need food. And then we
Mm,
had to go out and how do we solve the food problem? And then we listened again when research started telling us about nose masks. And then we had, oh, you could reduce contamination by wearing nose mask. And then we started thinking, okay, so how do we provide nose mask? And just to the point you said, that leadership is so critical. you must be humble enough to listen and also be an example. And you know, the more we did this thing, the more we had partners, the more we had more people going to the field. So very great points you made there. And I just want to state it at this point that if you have any questions for Caren, I'll probably ask just a few more questions over the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll open the floor to questions from members on the call tonight. So please drop your questions in the box, and I'm sure Caren will be happy to answer them. It's not every time we bring somebody from Kenya, so we're going to get all the Kenyan wisdom. All right. So so let's talk
Actually,
about
can I say something about love before you ask?
Absolutely.
So I say I really believe in love. And I feel like to lead is to serve is to love. And to love is to embrace the vulnerability that, you know what, I could actually get hurt in the course of this, but there's no better, higher way to lead than to lead through love. One of the other things I want to talk about love is that I feel like love is the most powerful force for change in the world. We can have tools and all these other things, you know, for change.
Sure.
But the most powerful one is soft, silent, but so potent, and that is love. Just imagine what would happen to our families, our society, our institutions, our nations, our continent, if just maybe 10%, a few of us or each one of us just practiced a little bit of love, genuine love for humanity, wanting to see the best for other people. And what I also learn and realize is that genuine love and great service and excellent service for humanity starts with self. Yes. We cannot love other people and care for other people more than we love and care for ourselves. The measure through which we care for ourselves and see ourselves and love ourselves is the same measure we will use to care for, serve, and love other people. So I really lately am a big champion of self-care, self-love, because that's really important. And a lot of times I meet people who say that, oh no, that's selfish. And I'm like, no, it's actually necessary. It is not selfish. We have to take care of ourselves and make sure our glasses are full and overflowing, that then we are giving from the overflow and not that we are pouring from an empty cup. Absolutely. That as leaders, when we have opportunities to go fill other people's cups, make sure that we make time to go to places where we get refreshed and where we get resourced. Because then if we don't, we die, and after we're gone, we get replaced, and really what we're trying to fight for by running on empty and really more than we love ourselves then really goes to waste. So self-love, self-care is really important. So let's begin by taking care of ourselves to be able to take care of other people effectively and sufficiently. Yeah.
Wow. So that's so powerful, Caren. And, you know, I guess we could go on and on about love because it's such a big point, isn't it? I remember a conversation I had with a gentleman a few years ago, and he said to me, when you see terrorists and when you see bandits, what do you think? Well, you know, do you think they decided to be like that? And then in the situation where you have them maybe even kidnap people and you say, oh, have mercy, or you know, show some love. These guys don't understand what love is. You know, they've not seen love, they've not experienced love, which brings the point of why each and every one of us must have more than enough and share with others, because there's so many people out there that could do with a little bit of extra love. So I know we can go on and on about love. So let's let's move to the next question. So let's talk about challenges, because I mean, clearly now there are people on this call thinking, okay, I want to join, I want to, you know, be part of nation building. I want to be more patriotic. I want to be, you know, a builder of my nation. I want to get involved. But what about this challenge? What about that challenge? What about this challenge? So I don't know, maybe you want to talk to us. What are the challenges that you have seen that youth and women have faced in nation building? Because my next question will be, how do we solve them? So let's talk about some of the challenges you've seen, and we'll take it from there.
One of the biggest challenges I have seen is, I think maybe even all challenges emanate from this one challenge, which is mindset.
Absolutely.
The Bible says that as a man thinketh, so is he. That we are what we think. If you think you are awesome, you're great, you're powerful, you have what it takes to succeed, oh my goodness, nothing, no amount of hurdles or challenges will put you down. But if you imagine or you have the mindset that, oh, I am nothing, I am not enough, I don't have what it takes, I am weak, I am this and that, oh my goodness. However much resources and time and goodwill and favor that is on you is present and available to you, oh my goodness, you will fail terribly, because after all, you've already failed in the mind even before you begin to tackle the different hurdles. So the biggest challenge and the biggest hurdle I feel is the mindset. So that is number one. So in fact, then the solution would be, can we have our mindsets transformed? Can we emancipate ourselves and our minds? The moment we win the battle here, we win every other battle in life, and in different economic, political, decision-making processes and spaces. Now, on to other challenges. Of course, when it comes to people who wish to participate in policy processes, political processes, the question of resources then come in. Unfortunately, in our continent, money has really been glorified, that even if you are a leader of integrity, you have impeccable track record, and you have no money, you will not get elected, unfortunately. So that is
So
a
it's
big
not only in Nigeria.
Oh my goodness, in Kenya and in many other countries that I know, oh my goodness, you need money. Lots of money, by the way, lots of money to get elected. And I've seen that that is one big challenge that affects both in a big way. It affects everybody, but in a big way, women and young people, because then they have lesser access to economic resources than men who are traditionally in power and in positions of leadership, and own capital and investments here and there. Number two is political systems. I have seen political parties really disenfranchising women and young people. And I don't know whether this is happening in Nigeria, where a major political party would have a youth wing and a women wing, or a youth league and a women's league. But then they have the main mother party. So decisions are made at the main mother party level and not at the youth wing or the women wing. And like there's no power in those wings, surely. So systematically then the political parties are actually designed to have fewer women and fewer young people in some of those positions. So the political institution is a challenge. Systemic challenges actually do exist, in terms of culturally speaking, stereotypes, saying, no, women cannot lead here, the women's place is in the private sphere, not in the public sphere. Or young people, no, come on. What people keep saying that what an old man can see while seated on a stool, a young man cannot see even while standing on the tallest tree. Yeah. And so they use that to say, no, so young people, sit down and listen to us. And sometimes old people actually mislead young people and mislead society and make wrong decisions. But really, it's time to listen to each other. And it's time to have every leader, every person in every sphere and institutions normalizing, creating spaces where we actually learn from each other and we allow each other to thrive, as long as we put in work. Whether you're a young person, however young you are, or your gender, it does not matter, or even economic status. I really hope we get to a level where finances do not really count as much as they do, but it's the character, integrity, discipline, impeccable track record. Those are some of the things that really should count. Insecurity is a big thing, and this is also tied to the economics. you'd see a lot of times people need to use lots of money to hire security to just make sure they are safe in political processes, or even sometimes in running businesses or enterprises and stuff like that away from the political space. So that is also a challenge. But one thing I keep saying is, are we desperate enough? How badly do we want change in our society? And if we really, really badly want it, then we will be so ready to pay the price that a politician, some person comes to bribe you or asks for a bribe before they offer service or before you get into a certain process, and you will say no. I'd rather lose this position or lose this tender or lose this money or lose this political seat than actually bribe or give money or give favors, whatever the favors are. So I think that is really one other than shifting mindset, we need to, especially the younger generation, people need to be ready to pay the price. Because like right now in Kenya, young people are asking questions and saying the members of parliament that voted yes, despite their constituents sitting down with them to tell them, please vote no because of this, and that. And they said, no, my political party stand is this, and it is my political party that ensured I became a member of parliament. And so this is the position I'm going to vote for. Really, some of those things are a question of, as citizens, are we ready to pay the price and even avoid being bribed? Or in Kenya, I don't know whether this happens in Nigeria, around election time, you'll find politicians doing lots of shopping and coming to farmers saying, this is yours, this is yours. And people feel obligated that, this person gave me food, so I them. I think we really need to
That's
be.
weaponizing poverty, we call it. You've weaponized poverty.
By the way, that is weaponizing poverty. You're right. Imagine.
So I'm sure a lot of Nigerians on this call are wondering, oh, so this is not just in Nigeria. Oh, wow. So this is happening in Kenya, and this is the purpose why we at African Governance Institute for Development have this, across the continent conversation. We had a professor from Cote d'Ivoire the other day, and just him talking to us about their political structure was mind-blowing. It was literally mind-blowing, because I couldn't imagine our president having that type of powers. People would not live in Nigeria anymore. The power is so concentrated with the president. He appoints governors, he appoints prime minister, he appoints, and I was like, you can't do that in Nigeria. It's not going to work. There won't be a Nigeria if you go that far. But you're spot on, Caren, and you've said so many things. I really don't know which one to pick on, but I do know that we need to start to appreciate one another in this nation building. I think the first thing is understanding, if it is really nation building, I cannot do it alone. The political, you mustn't leave it to the political class. The private sector must play its own. The public, the civil service, the bureaucrats, the social sector, academia, the traditional institutions, everybody must lay brick by brick in front of their own house. Everybody must put in their own quota if we're really going to build this nation. And I think it starts, like you said, with the mindset that I cannot do it alone. I need to hear his own views and see how he's saying it, so that we can add his knowledge or wisdom to my knowledge and my wisdom, and then we can build together. There's a story I heard of an organization in South Africa that went to meet the government when they wanted to do the school feeding program. I understand the organization owns Nando's. I went to meet government and said, hey, government, look, if you guys want to do this school feeding program, let's work with you. We understand logistics, we understand supply chain, we understand the food industry, we understand. And because the government worked with them, they were able to get food into the schools much quicker, much earlier, without corruption, without a lot of things, because private sector decided to join government to build that nation for that policy, the school feeding program. And I think that is part of what we want to share tonight, that even in your space, you can build by joining hands, by collaborating with other sectors. You've talked about money. It's the same here. And like you said, because the older men have built the networks, they're more empowered to run the system than a young person that has no experience and whatnot. Same with the party system. It's highly patriarchal, highly, it's a, old boys club, as it were. And then they leave the women singing songs at campaign grounds, singing the
Yeah.
song, and then the youth doing the hard work, So these are the things, and then insecurity again, it goes without saying. So I think you've listed the challenges, but I just want you to talk about maybe one or two other things you see as opportunities within these challenges. Then I'll open up the questions for our audience to ask.
Well, one of the things I would say is we need to strengthen our institutions, political institutions, economic institutions, social institutions, infrastructure building. We just need to strengthen our institutions. Supporting and nurturing leaders is one thing. You can have an institution that is so strong that however bad a human being is that takes over the leadership of that institution, just because the institution has systems, structures, it's accountable, it's transparent, it's really strong, it has great human capital, then it will be difficult to bring such an institution down, or just to work haphazardly, as a leader or as somebody in position of authority.
So, Caren, can you hold your thoughts there? Because I'm seeing some questions at my peripheral vision. And I think what I'm hearing is good when one individual has the right values, when one individual has the right orientation. How do you make it a collective so that it's now institution-wide or it's now nationwide? Because if Caren has the value to be a good person, and every other person around Caren doesn't care about nation building, they will have a problem, because you need an army to run this. So maybe as you're talking about strengthening institutions, which is a collective thing, how do we move from individual to collective so that it becomes what all of us are interested in?
Number one, I would say mechanisms and policies, having mechanisms and policies in place that are beyond the leader. For instance, if you're running a political party or if you're running an organization, you have, let's say, 3 signatories. There's the executive director or the CEO, there's the finance person or the CFO, and then there's somebody else, to just make sure there are checks and balances. In Kenya, as in many African countries, and many countries globally, I see that in their constitution is enshrined values that leaders and citizens are supposed, and even public servants are supposed to adhere to. So such a thing would really add value, but then there would be need for mechanisms to make sure that you're following the laid down rules and procedures, to then make sure that people are living and abiding by the values and the systems set in place. That then when there's a breach of agreement, then people are able to know, and either the person goes to jail or somebody is held accountable. So that accountability mechanism that is institutionalized, it goes beyond one person to every person who serves in that institution, or every person who gets to serve the public. They then get to live by certain mechanisms. However, it's one thing to have it enshrined in the constitution or in the law or in policies. It's another totally different thing to live it out, and to have leaders and people in positions of authority actually live by the set value system. So it's then important and imperative to have citizens be on the lookout and be vigilant, to then ask questions and go to meet these leaders in their offices and ask the questions, or even tag them on Twitter, social media, and say, the allocation for this school was this much, but we've just seen only this much has been used. Where did the rest of the money go to? Those questions would really, really be important.
Caren, you hit the nail on the head, and you couldn't have said it better. And part of why we hold these webinars is to empower the citizens with knowledge so that they understand their rights and can ask questions. If you leave it to one organization to hold government accountable, the government will fight that organization to the ground, for example, or any institution. But when it is spread across the people, you can't arrest everybody. You can't hold everybody. So that's why, and talking about, making it system-wide or institutionalizing it, transparency, whereby the system, you have to declare, you have to show this, so that people can actually see and ask questions, and then obviously creating that mindset for people to ask questions. You also, I guess, have said this earlier on about leading by examples, example, and it's enough for it to be in the constitution and all of it. But I guarantee you, if you have a president or a chief executive that people know this guy will not take one shilling or one naira, and if you do, he will deal with you, then there's a propensity for people to say, look, this guy might be a madman. Don't let's play with this man. Let's not do it. And I think that's why leading by example is extremely, extremely important. And that leader must also teach those values, because every time we talk about orientation, I think it was there's a Dr. Sam Adeyemi in Nigeria, and he says, if a group of armed robbers want to pick a leader, who do you think they will pick? A fellow armed robber or a pastor? Of course, they will pick a fellow armed robber, because hey, that's how they will be. But if by chance the pastor becomes the leader, if he's not careful, the armed robbers will influence him.
Yeah.
So he has to now be deliberate in influencing the group with new sets of values. And, like I always say, is values that affect your thinking. Your thinking will affect your emotions. Your emotions will affect your behavior. And this, your behavior or action over a period of time, it starts to spread to others, and then it becomes culture. So if you're going to change culture, you have to start back from values, and then let new sets of values bring new sets of thinking, and new set of thinking bring new sets of emotion, and new set of emotion, new sets of belief system to new actions, new behavior, and then new culture. And so it's that, it sounds very long, but that's intentional putting of values. And that's why we're seeing it more, because of the breakdown of families. Though some of the things we saw or we see in society, the society we knew in the 60s, it was the parents that taught these values. They taught these values to the children. And when the children went out, they were living these values. This was what we were taught from the homes. But because the homes are not teaching these values, the schools are not teaching these values. So when people go out, they're exhibiting whatever character they want, and there is no collective shared values. They've lost the values. They've been influenced and everything else. So I think, to the question of how do you take it from just one man trying to be the good guy to making it everybody, I think it requires some of these things Caren and I have just shared. Caren, did you have any other thoughts? Because we will open up to the questions now.
Yeah, just one more on education. I believe education is really, really important. And for our African continent, after colonialism, the education system was meant to produce a certain caliber of an African worker or an African with a certain mindset. But we really need to be deliberate to move away from that and have Africans who are free thinking, are critical thinkers, are solution creators, problem solvers, and not people who easily run away and go elsewhere in the world to look for better opportunities. Yet there are opportunities here, and that we can create the opportunities here. So education is really important. Education of the heart, education of the mind, civic education, having an awareness, that is so critical, because when people know better, they become better and they do better. Yeah,
absolutely. That's spot on, Caren. You couldn't have said it any better, to be honest. What type of education? It's an input-output thing, isn't it? The input will always determine the output. So if the input is one that is overly dependent, overly favoring outside Africa to come and help you, aid, not trade, and all of this sort of mindsets, it's going to show up subconsciously without people even realizing they are playing to a script. There's an agenda that is set, and then you're just playing to the script without realizing, that's what you're doing. Okay, so I think we could go on and on, but I'm going to hold my questions, and I'm just going to let the AGID team put up some questions. Caren, I hope you don't mind taking them before you go.
So is it okay if I read the question? I can see the
Please
question.
go ahead. Yes.
Um, Malata Kumbo.
This
Yeah.
she's one of our hosts at the University of Ibadan.
Oh, lovely.
She's
Wow.
the we're partnering with our institute. She's the director of the
Okay.
Institute of African
Oh,
Studies. So we
that's
celebrate
lovely.
you.
Yeah, that's lovely. So she's asking the question. I want to ask if Kenya has a structure that accommodates the views and voices of youth and women. So there's the women's movement, there's the youth civil society movement, there's the student council, there's the National Youth Council. So there's a fragmentation of platforms that collect views and voices of women and young people, persons with disability. But then, unfortunately, there's no collective space where women and young people come together to actually share their views. Yesterday, after the president spoke, we also had the vice president speaking and saying we now want to sort of formalize listening to the views of the views of the citizens and of young people to then inform the policy making process. So we're hoping that maybe there's going to be an entity that would have all these young people come together to share their views, their communique, their petitions, whatever it is, with government. But I see need to have collective voice because then we are stronger together. But when we are saying the same thing but from different quarters, different corners, no, that is not strong. So I see the value for that. I see the value for that. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Next question, please.
Wasi says, please, what's the percentage of women in government in Kenya? Is it the same story everywhere in Africa? Wow, that's a really good question. In Kenya, the percentage of women in parliament is about 23, I think, 0.5%. So the parliament has about 23.5 or 5 to 7% representation of women. Our constitution indicates that we need at least a third of parliament and a third of public positions and all appointments to be women or not of the same people of the same gender. Mostly women, because then usually they are the fewer or lesser in number in terms of representation, but we are not there yet. Across the continent, I see the number being quite low. Actually, it's less than 20 across the continent, representation of women in public, political, parliamentary spaces. But interestingly, Rwanda's parliament has over 60% to represent. It is actually leading in the
Yes,
what?
is 62%. Yeah.
Yeah, they are leading globally. So what are they doing right that we can borrow from the rest of the continent and of course the rest of the world to make sure all voices are actually heard, that over 52% of the population of Africa being female, that we can have that 52% representation in the court system, in parliament, in schools, in decision-making processes, across board, in businesses, private sector, all spaces. We need that, 50-50% gender representation. I believe it's possible, but I know a lot more work needs to happen. For instance, mentorship of the women to just realize, we can and have more women take up leadership roles. Shifting of mindsets for men to realize that women's empowerment and greater representation does not mean men are being demeaned, and it's not a competition, it's a partnership. So that shifting of mindset also really needs to happen, and just creating supportive systems and having systems change to then facilitate more women representation. And sadly, I actually realized that globally, just about 3% of representation in parliament is of people below the age of 30. That is so disturbing.
Wow.
Yet globally, the majority of the population is comprised of young people. So how
Yep.
come? It doesn't make sense. So I think we need to remove these barriers and just make sure all voices are heard, because then we are better together.
Absolutely. And that's part of the work again we do at AGID, trying to ensure more young people can get into office. And to your point on women representation, Nigeria in our National Assembly have just 6% of women. It's horrible,
Oh, that's
because
low.
it's not just a gender conversation. It speaks to the quality of decision making. It speaks
Yeah.
to so many other factors. So yes, we have, I think East and South Africa have better representation, partly because of laws, partly because of the party system and the electoral systems that are being used. And those are some of the reforms that must happen if we're going to see change, because men are not going to just want to get off.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're going to have to make strong moves to make that happen.
Yeah.
All right, next
What
question, please.
what are
Sorry?
you guys doing? What are you guys doing to make sure that that changes? 6% is low.
So we, I mean, there was a time it was 9%. So I'm not sure that's so. But the fact is, Nigeria is part of the affirmative action. 30% or should be women, and you see a bit of that in appointive positions at subnational levels. Some have more than 30%, but you actually hit the nail on the head in the sense that even in some cases, mentoring has to happen, mindset
Yeah.
shifts have to happen.
Yeah.
People are still held with tradition, culture, all of these things that say women should not step up, and they believe those things, and it's that intentional route. We had the Not Too Young to Run bill passed into law, which
Mm.
reduced the age of being able to run for office from 35 to 25. But again, it's much more than the law. You need the money, you need the know-how, you need the party structure and a lot of other things to be in place. So I think the starting point is the awareness that it's just not good enough and it's not acceptable. And there's starting to be more organizations that are coming into that space to bring mentoring. AGID is one of them, mentoring to young people, to women, to ensure that it's not just going to run for office, but running effectively to win and actually be valuable in your time in office.
Okay, that's nice.
All right.
Adisa says, how do I lead young ladies who don't have families of their own yet or come from dysfunctional homes to nation build? Wow. That's a really interesting question. And now I'm going to turn this around. So, many years ago, I got into the political space and I wanted to run. And I remember the conversation that, you have to be married, to have a family to be elected. And I realized that
That was not by law, right? That was just cultural tradition. It's not by law.
okay, yeah. No, it's not by law. And I realized that affects both men and women. And I've always been very curious. What is it about marriage and family that qualifies one,
Yeah.
to be a leader? So let me ask you, say this question. Must
Okay, I'll try my best.
must one have a family for them to be awesome leaders and participate in nation building? What's the connect? Is there a connection?
Absolutely not. But there is a presumption that one that can manage his home can manage, positions of authority. There is no proof, and we certainly have stories of young people not married still playing extremely valuable roles in society and in government. But like I said, in Africa, we're still plagued with, and maybe I shouldn't use the word plague, but we're still very much affected by cultural traditions of respect, and it imputes some of those things. The older people should be married, and so the older people know better, and you should defer to the older people, and the older people that are married and are able to make better decisions. So there is no proof, no empirical evidence, but it is some of the social cultural norms that has seeped into the system for such a long time. I faced it when I was running for office. When I showed up, I showed up age 35. I got into office at age 35, and they will look at me, and I always made sure I wore my ring. and I'll make sure I wave my hand so they can see the ring that this one is married, just in case that was also one of the things you were going to use
Yeah.
to disqualify me. But I think it's
Mm.
just presumed and imputed into the mindsets of, unfortunately, the electorate or members of society, that if you're
Mm.
not married, or being married brings a level of status or know-how, and so that is the minimum requirement you need to be able to
Mm.
control or direct or lead me.
Yeah.
And we've seen cases that that's clearly not true.
Yeah, and that's, thank you so much for your for sharing your feedback.
Yeah.
Now, let's paint this picture. On the one part, we have this young woman or young man, not married, not having their own families. They have integrity. They have a track record of great leadership. They have created impact wherever they are, in whatever space they are in. So that is one. And then we have this other person, male or female, married with their own families, abusing their
Mm,
spouses,
mm,
using their children, cheating left, right, and center, and
mm,
actually raising wounded citizens.
mm.
Who is better? Who would you take as your leader?
I think the answer goes without saying. And again, when you get to the campaign ground, those are the things you
Yeah,
must show. You must
yeah,
prove yourself beyond reasonable doubt that even if I am not married, and so for example, the Speaker of the House of Assembly, when I was in the House of the Ninth Assembly, was not
yeah,
married when he won when he got elected, but he quickly married afterwards. Uh, to to ensure the comments didn't continue,
yeah,
but again, it makes it doesn't add anything to the conversation.
yeah,
I think we are more enlightened than
yeah.
that in this century. Yes.
Yeah, and I would actually add to this conversation and say, whether one is married or single, and especially for single men and women listening to this, you are enough just as you are.
Mm,
You are enough as
mm,
you are. You
mm.
can lead yourself, you can lead other people, you can lead change, you can live your purpose, you can live a meaningful life.
That's right.
And as whole as you are, when you meet another human being with whom your values align, you love each other, you care for each other, and form a union, you then complement each other, not necessarily completing each other, but complementing each other and making each other's lives even better, and supporting each other to then make a difference and live out your purpose in a bigger way. But just being single does not make you any lesser of a human being, or limit you in terms of your purpose and your destiny in life. You are enough just as you are, and you are worthy, and you matter just as you are.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Opemi says there are so many dysfunctional homes with dysfunctional people in Africa. You know what? Say, I think maybe one of the next forums needs to be about family and homes.
That's when we said nation building, and we started off with family. We might as well treat the issues.
Yeah, very important. So the person says, Opeyemi says, there's so many dysfunctional homes with dysfunctional people in Africa. This helps some political aspirants feed off the pain points of these people. Oh man, that is so true. How do we from grassroots lay emphasis on the importance of voting right, especially the uneducated people? Now, again, I do not know whether you guys have this in Nigeria, but I have seen in the rural communities in Kenya where um, an individual, a politician, is actually married, especially men. But then, for them to get elected, one of the strategies they use is you go marrying from every clan in that constituency, so that everywhere you go, you are family.
We are connected.
Yeah, you're connected. This is ours. Let's give him.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to know how many wives all your politicians have. I really
Oh
don't.
man, it's crazy. And so you see, people are leaving wounded souls around in the name of getting elected and getting voted. And yes, they actually get voted in. So apparently, I would say civic education plays a critical role. especially if either for the uneducated people less enlightened individuals in terms of information and awareness. We need to create more awareness through whatever means or form, religious institutions, through schooling system, through social media for young people, through merchandise, through radio, vernacular radio. We use every means, every tool available to just make sure our citizenry, our neighbors are more aware, and that they understand that their votes actually do count, and their vote is directly proportional to the quality of life they live, because then the person they get to vote in will determine whether they live dignified lives or they really live in very dehumanizing conditions. So civic education would really, really be key.
I think you're spot on. We have some engagements at the grassroots level. What we found that people in the grassroots are very politically active, but they need more education in terms of understanding, governance and their rights and all of those things. So very active when it comes to electoral cycles, and then after that, they get back into parties. But the actual understanding of civic rights, civic education is part of the work we do, and it's so important because we've started to see the results coming out of that, being more informed, understanding that yes, even after you get into office, you are still responsible to answer my questions and still give feedback to the queries we have. So I think it's so important. All right. We have just 14 minutes left, so we'll just try and rush through the remaining questions.
Okay, so I see Tolu has asked, hi Caren, you mentioned leading from the home. So how can I lead young ladies who come from poor socioeconomic backgrounds with no real family to begin from, begin to be nation builders? How do I begin that conversation of nation building with young adolescent girls? Thank you, Tolu, for this question. Now, let me also say something about what's happening with the Kenyan situation. If you've watched news, you've seen there are so many young girls participating in the protests, because one of the items in the bill is introducing a levy on sanitary towels. And so that means the sanitary pads would be less accessible, especially to girls and women from economically disempowered backgrounds. And so women,
I would want to tax that.
Yeah. Imagine, yeah. And so women and especially young girls, including adolescent girls, have been on the streets saying, no, surely, if condoms are free, why would the sanitary pads be taxed? This is not proper, and that has generated such a huge debate. So you can see there's such a correlation between the leaders we elect, the policies that are passed, and the quality of life that we live. That policies actually affect every aspect of life, whether you're an old man or elderly man or woman, you're a young person, you're an adolescent, you're a child, you own a business or not, every citizen from every walk of life gets affected by the quality of leaders they elect. And so again, in a big way, this comes back to awareness creation. And for young girls, Tolu, I would say we begin from a point of supporting them to discover the power within. Because there's something about poverty, there's something about coming from a disempowering sort of or disenfranchised background, which is that it eats away at someone's self-esteem, especially for young girls and young women, and supporting them to know that you are not your background, you are not where you were born, you are not the experiences you've been through, you're way more than that. That's really, really critical. It makes a whole lot of a difference. So supporting an adolescent girl or supporting a young woman to realize that they are worthy just as they are, that they are important, they have power within, and that they shouldn't allow their gender or their economic situation or things like those to actually limit what they can do in terms of nation building, or what they can do in terms of pursuing happiness, pursuing purpose in life, and just being the best they can be and living the best life. Like there's no limitation. The only limitation is in the mind. And that's why we need to begin with the mind, so that then the change for these young women is from the inside out. They know that they are valuable and, all that. And then, on the outside, they actually manifest that worth, that power. They speak up. That even when they're shaking, they still speak up and make their voices heard. And they know that my vote counts, my voice counts, that I can make a difference. So it needs to emanate from within, outside. Because then,
And
yeah.
Caren, isn't that the point, that's why nation building cannot be left to the politicians alone?
Oh, yeah.
Because the politicians will never do this. So that's why the social, the NGOs, the civil society, the other groups must all play their part, because we need every part doing its own bit together to be able to have that nation we want. So you leave the politicians to be making these policies, in quotes, ensuring you have the right. I mean, when I was in office, my wife, who happens to be Tolu, that has been asking these questions, was the one that made us. She was the one that made us do a sanitary pad run in my constituency. It wasn't. Wow. It's not a natural thinking for me, and you can't blame me. I'm thinking of many things, but sanitary pad is not one of them. But because my wife was, involved in a lot of things I did, she requested that we did that, and we had the padded drive run, which she ran in collaboration with us, and we're able to reach out to girls. And again, to the point that you cannot leave nation building to politicians alone. Every part must play their own part to make it happen. Okay, I think we're ending by 8:30. Well, it's almost 10:30 in Kenya. So we thank you, Caren, for being up this late. We'll just take a few more questions and we'll end the call.
Afolabi has asked the question, must protests always be taken or done before the voice of the people are heard in the nation building? Because it's obvious most African countries take decisions without consideration of the interests and the welfare of the people. So I think I'm missing something, the first part.
No, I think the question is, must protest always happen? It seems this African events, so must we get to protests, which I think we started discussing already.
We shouldn't really get to we get to protests because there's a problem, because people have not been listened to, because the policy makers have not sat down with the citizens to listen to the different opinions and their voices. That's why we end up with protests. But protests wouldn't really be there if the leaders or people in positions of authority would sit down with the citizens and actually listen to them and say, this is what we want to do. What do you think? What is the challenge you're facing? What solution are you proposing? Because I've come to realize that people actually know what their problems are, what the solutions are, and how to go about the solutions. So I think it's then to the benefit of the leaders or politicians or people in political office to then also sit down with people and listen from them and learn from them, and then implement together with them. Then those protests wouldn't really be happening. But in Africa, the story has been different. Then listening takes a backseat. But I hope many of us listening and all of us would actually prioritize listening to each other, listening to the people we lead, listening to young people, listening to our partners, listening to our children, listening. Oh my goodness, listening.
So important. It's interesting. We had a webinar on protests in March. We didn't know this was going to happen. And protest is one of the many tools of engaging, and like you said, it should be the last resort. We should have had dialogue. We should have had different means of engaging before resorting to protest. So clearly, it should be the last line if people are listening. All right, I think we'll have just one more question.
Caren, what's your take on the prospect of the protest in Kenya? Wow. Let me see. So there's this song. I know many Gen Zs have used this song in a few videos on TikTok here and there. There's this movie, Sarafina.
Okay.
Um, One of the major songs in the movie Sarafina, "Freedom is coming tomorrow." So Afolabi, that's what I think about the protest in Kenya. That it's going to be successful. I'm very optimistic that I think was it Tolu who asked the question about whether there's a platform or mechanism to hear voices of women and young people. I believe, I really trust. Let me say, I trust that our leadership in Kenya is going to set up that platform to hear the views, especially of young people, the Gen Zs who are leading this whole process in the protest, to say we want to be heard. And they've gone ahead to put together like a memorandum to say these are our minimum non-negotiables. Like, for instance, we want people who steal public resources to go to jail. We want these positions to be scrapped off. Or we want integrity. We want, public debt to be, this, and so they're giving specifications on different things. So I believe this is a really, really positive step in the right direction, where citizens are realizing that they need to be heard and that they can speak up. And the leaders are also realizing that, oh my goodness, if we do not listen to people, then we will be in trouble. We need to listen to people, and we need to listen to each other. So I believe that this is going to lead to a really better place for us as a country.
Amazing, amazing. And so, as we wrap up, I'm just going to ask you to have your final words, Caren. Your transformative leader and coach. Maybe you just want to give a final word to young people, to women, how they can become more impactful. Just any parting words as we bring this to a close.
Oh, wow. Whew. Let me see. Let me see what to say. Wow. Whoever is listening to this conversation, number one, thank you so much for making time to join us in just having this conversation about nation building, because, oh my goodness, this is really important. That as we live life, surely we need to enjoy it. We need to live in dignity. We need to live in situations and environments that facilitate our ability to thrive, to utilize our skills, to discover our purpose and just be the best we can be. And so this conversation is timely, is critical, is important. And thank you so much for making time to be part of this conversation. Number two, and most importantly, I would like to say that each and every one of us has a purpose. Each and every one of us was created for a reason. We're made for more. And where we are is not our final destination. It's just a stepping stone to greatness in life. And greatness resides within each and every one of us. And whoever you are, young, old, male, female, from urban center or rural community, it does not matter. I would like to remind you, because I hope you know this, that you matter, you're valuable, you're special, that you have a purpose. Please pursue that, because life then gets so meaningful when we live our purpose. And challenges will come, setbacks will come to you as an individual, to your nation, to your family, to your institution, but don't give up. As long as you have the breath of life, as long as you can breathe, your story can change. Your tomorrow can be different. Hang in there, and be ready to pay the price and just keep moving forward. Even if it means you're crawling, just keep, as long as you're moving forward, keep moving forward. Believe in yourself. You are not your experiences that you've gone through. You're not your background. You're not where you're born. You're not all those things. You are just special as you are. You are a special human. You're an awesome human, and you are enough. You are worthy. Please remember that you're worthy and you're special. Despite anything around you or your circumstances, you are special, and always make your voice heard. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Wow, 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 wow. Wow, this is amazing. Caren, so first of all, I want to thank you personally. Thank you for making this conversation so easy, so just really organic without any sense of, if you like, pressure on you. You've just made it so easy. So I really want to thank you. Caren and I met not too long ago, thanks to Omolewa, who is also on the call. And since, different conversations, I've just found you to be, a breath of fresh air. You epitomize, knowledge, courage, and so many other things as a leader. So I really want to thank you for being here tonight, for spending the last hour and a half with us. And on behalf of the African Governance Institute for Development, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that we will continue to work together to build our nations and our continent. And also thank you for thanking the people that are here tonight. You've done the thank yous, but I also want to thank everyone for joining in this evening, for spending the last 90 minutes with us. We appreciate your time. We do not take it for granted. If you are yet to follow us on our social media platforms, please do so. The links are on the link below, and we'll continue the conversation. So Caren, once again, thank you for coming online. We will continue our conversations later. Thank you.
Thank you.